tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent.
Hello and welcome to the Red Diaper Pail. This is episode 28. It is March 8th, 2026. This is a podcast about art, culture, history, politics, technology, and parenting from the left perspective. And I'm Simone.
And I'm John Paul.
And we got through daylight savings time.
We did.
And we are now...
This is the good one because they sleep it longer as opposed to...
Well, they sleep the same amount of time.
Yeah, but it's like later in the day.
But the clock tells you it's later.
Is that right? Wait, am I confused?
Well, they woke up at what was 6 a.m. for them, but it was 7 a.m. by the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Except
as opposed to 5 a.m.
Except for by the oven clock. It was still 6 a.m. Yeah, so did that. So our horrible headlines this week are, there's the war in Iran.
Yeah.
Epic fury.
Epic fury.
And it's real bad.
It is real bad. I think I have this tendency to overestimate the thinking that goes into these things because the stakes are so high. And there's a lot of very intelligent, powerful people involved.
Not in this time.
Well, not this time. I mean, certainly not intelligent.
This is what I like to call the Hegsdeath factor. So we're over a week into the bombing campaign on Iran by the United States and Israel. Mm-hmm. We're also over a weekend of Israel just completely advancing on southern Lebanon. And Iran's hitting back. Some low lights of what we've seen over the last week. The United States hit an Iranian ship that was not armed, was in international waters, and it was coming back from a...
It was basically a naval military parade. It's a military exercise.
Coming back from a military exercise with India that the United States had been invited to. So they were awares.
And were going to participate in until the very last moment.
We hit the ship, which is not cool. We did not rescue victims in the water. Also, not allowable. And then Hegsdeath the next day acted like it was a trophy. Yeah. So that was certainly a low light.
Yeah, I just these are the people who think of themselves as godly and ask themselves what would Jesus do, and they are absolutely drooling at the mouth to inflict cruelty on people. They just
And last night the United States hit desalination plants and oil depots all in and around Tehran, leading it to significant fires. Mm-hmm. And also this is destruction of civilian infrastructure that supports a city that's larger than New York City in population. Mm-hmm. And this morning, Iranians woke up to black skies and soot-covered everything and oily rain.
Oh my God.
It was an environmental disaster. People are wearing gas masks. They're reporting that their lungs are burning. I mean, it's horrifying. Also, definitely against international law. But that's the thing. This is actually the Hegsdeath factor, not his stupidity.
Yeah.
But this is a non-woke war. This is what the genocide in Gaza has paved the way for.
Yeah. Whereas famously, the Kambahi River Collective was leading the war against Iraq. This time they've gotten all the woke people out of the way and are doing it the way that they always should have done, which is no regard for civilians, children, necessary civilian infrastructure. And then
I'm glad he pushed Code Pink out of the war room.
Right. Why are we getting permission from Code Pink? When Trump was asked if they actually bombed this desalination plant, and his response was, we're talking about people who behead babies and tear people in half. So no, I don't know anything about that. That was his response. So, which is genocidal language.
That's straight out of the literal script that Netanyahu and his buds used following October 7th and what they then did to Gazans. Yeah. The horrible, atrocious thing happens that's obviously done by a state military actor. Mm-hmm. They don't claim responsibility, but they also don't claim that it wasn't them. And then they tell you about the victims being not human.
Yeah.
I mean, they did this over and over again in Gaza. They said, oh, did we bomb hospitals and schools? I don't know. But they raped people on October 7th. Mm-hmm. And like that's the conversation. I saw Trump and Hegseth get asked about bombing the girls' school, which was definitely the United States. And Trump kind of said, I don't know about that. And Hegseth goes, the only people that kill civilians are the Iranians.
Only people who kill them intentionally.
Right.
Right. Which the
is
distinction
also
here is if I put a hand over my eyes and throw bombs at a tightly packed civilian city, it's not targeting civilians.
Well,
so it's okay that I know that civilians are going to die.
That's his logic when he's being asked about the girls' school. But this isn't a woke war logic. And what Trump tweeted just earlier this evening, this is March 8th, is we will kill you all. They're basically saying we have no problem removing the entire population because you are godless heathens and you're bad.
Yeah.
I mean, when they get put in the spot about, did you hit a girls' school? They're going to tell you they're neither going to confirm or deny, and they're going to give you a red herring.
Yeah.
But this is what a non-PC war looks like in Trump's America.
Yeah,
we are only 8 days in. If this is what they're doing 8 days in.
Yeah, just ask for authorization to go 100 days, 100 more days.
They also will not deny that they will put in. They will not say we're not sending in ground troops, and they will not say that they're not going to start the draft.
Oh, can you imagine? The only thing they know how to do is to demoralize the American public. So at this point, there is no anti-war movement to speak of.
No kidding.
And you were reflecting on this like romanticization of the anti-war movement for Iraq, which is now being way overblown.
I know,
because they're so desperate for something.
There's nothing right now. People are like, well, when we went to war with Iraq, there was an anti-war movement. Listen.
Clearly not a good enough one.
I was there for that. I was a naive, idealistic, excitable teenager. And even I was like, wait, guys, is this it? Where is everybody?
That's all we got.
This is what we have now? There's like 10 of us. And now, seriously, I'm listening to podcasts and mainstream news and people on the street, people just talking, and they're like, yeah, that anti-war movement, like it was really organized, it happened, and now, and there's nothing now. And I'm like, we're going to do callbacks to that?
Yeah.
That was the good old days?
Yep, that was the good old days. And of course, they failed to stop anything. What they did do is they did summon something like shame and embarrassment on behalf of the Bush administration for the amount of civilians being killed. Although that didn't stop them from just shelling Fallujah and a bunch of other places when it behooved them to do that.
I mean, no war was stopped. Afghanistan and Iraq, we were in Afghanistan and Iraq for decades.
Yeah, and the atrocities that they were pragmatic for them to commit, they committed. So there was very little restraint.
I mean, Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib were all far after the anti-war, the good old days of that anti-war movement.
This time,
there's nothing.
There's nothing at all.
Nothing.
And I think that's because you hear someone say, look, they tear each other to pieces. So who cares if we blow up their school? It seems so blatantly obvious that public opinion doesn't matter. Like they didn't even try to court public opinion. I think.
I see. You're not saying that there's no anti-war movement because people are like, yeah, the Iranians deserve it.
No, yeah. There's no anti-war movement because in the past where they pretended that this was a democracy, it made people feel like they were entitled to an opinion. Now there's just being so blatant with it that the hardliners get the red meat they want to just repeat this nonsense online, and everyone else feels like, what is the even point?
Yeah,
there's no could care less what I have to say about this. They've made that as clear as they possibly.
They found the shortcut in that you don't actually have to manufacture consent.
Yeah, because
you can just do what you want to do.
Yeah, and that won't change until people are really willing to get their skin in the game and take risks. And I think they're betting on people. Like, for the most part, Americans are going to be outraged about this, but they're not going to do much about it besides vote.
The irony here is that I think Trump as a president, so the story is like he has a very small circle on this war. He probably did get played by Netanyahu on this one. Mm-hmm. And even though we talked about this in the last episode and we're like, Israel doesn't run U.S. foreign policy, let's not jump to those conclusions. Probably in this case, it does because of Trump.
I would say that the right analogy for this is like Jafar from Aladdin. Like, Jafar is not the Sultan, but Jafar as a advisor can run the kingdom through the Sultan if they're savvy enough. In this case, I think you could probably say that he played Trump and got what he wanted over U.S. interests.
And it's clear Jafar would be on the Epstein list. Based on my traumatizing experiences of that film.
He'd be running Epstein as a intelligence asset.
That's true. What I was saying, though, is that the irony here is that Trump is the kind of guy that probably would be highly impacted by a big anti-war movement because he would hate having to see it.
Yeah.
And there's the classic line with like, oh, Nixon saw the anti-war movement every day outside. He looked out the window of the White House and there they were. And he was like, ugh,
yeah,
gotta end this thing in Vietnam. But like Trump is the perfect guy for that. And there's fucking nothing. And I know we try to bring like hope and action to this podcast, but people need to fucking get out there and protest the war.
I mean, the Iranian expats who support this are out in much greater numbers.
I know.
They're out in every day.
That is not good.
I think that he would be highly affected by an anti-war movement, but what he is really afraid of and what he'd really be affected by is if the cult of personality gets cracked, and by that I mean people in his own base disaffecting en masse.
Well,
then I think we probably will start to see that.
I think
he knows it too.
A mass anti-war movement could be very well supported by people in his base.
Yeah,
his base did not want war. Also, there's some insiders in Washington who were like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio were like, really, we should be cautious here, and they've fallen in line now. But this is not a popular approach to this war.
No.
Now, apparently, the Democrats can support it, which is like, this is where I'm like, this is economic suicide. So it's unclear to me why the anti-war movement is not led by like most of the elected officials and like bankers right now.
Right, that's the real question. Is where? So tell us about this is the crazy thing to me is they seem to know how to do the domestic political stuff for now. They apparently don't know anything else about anything else. They do not understand Iran. They don't understand Iran's capabilities. They don't understand global economics at all.
So, right, but you'd think they're surrounded by or have people who are at least donating to them that like care about the stock market.
Right.
And who'd say like, if we're going to do Iran, here's some things I would do, here's some things I wouldn't do. And like the behavior we've seen so far leads me to believe that either we don't have a good analysis of the elite on this one, or like they're all fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Because let's talk about the economics.
So one thing that's important to understand is that all of the oil that the Saudi ruling family sells in the United States and so on, Bahrain, UAE, etc., they get paid for that oil and they immediately invest it in the U.S. stock market. So a lot of what's propping up the U.S. stock market is this cycle of money where it goes out to get oil and comes right back in as investment, and it adds up every single time. They sort of count it every single time it does the rounds. They count it as another dollar. Mm-hmm. This is artificially inflating the U.S. economy. It's mutually beneficial to the Saudis and the New York Stock Exchange, so it continues to happen. This is all dependent upon the Saudi Arabia having oil exports, right? And what's starting to happen now is that the oil isn't making it through the Strait of Hormuz, so it's being put into these storage containers, which are now near
capacity.
Once they reach capacity, you have to slow down production. And this is a monumental problem because the kind of extraction they do, if you stop it completely, you end up destroying the oil fields because they use all these chemicals that can't just sit.
Right.
They also have like workforce issues and all these other things, which mean that you don't just start up again tomorrow. They plan it to be at a sort of steady stream. And if that gets disrupted, it becomes very, very difficult. It's also dependent upon the Saudis having a workable society. So we're talking about the United States hitting desalination plants in Iran. If Iran tries to do that to Saudi Arabia and the UAE and etc., there's going to be mass exodus because there won't be enough fresh water. They won't be able to run society. These things, the societies will collapse.
Also worth noting, there's a drought in this area. Iran's experiencing a drought. I know some of these other surrounding countries are experiencing a drought. So hitting a urban desalination plant is a pretty extreme action as far as access to water.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind is that 10% of all air freight in the world goes through this region. Coming from one place to another, a lot of it's going to Africa.
What does that mean?
That means like stuff that's being shipped around the world comes through these big airports in like Abu Dhabi and etc.
Oh, okay. Not through the Strait of Hormuz.
No. So
But
if
these
these
big
airports can't function,
and these airports are getting hit.
right, then all of the like supply line stuff gets affected. I mean, 10%.
Also, if you can't get workers to the airport,
right,
the workers are leaving the cities, the workers aren't traveling on the roads, the workers can't fuel their cars to get to the airport, etc.
Right now, the United States has had to give a special permission to India to import oil and natural gas from Russia. After, if you'll recall, when we covered this, slamming India with an extra 50% tariff because they were doing this. Does that speak to you of people who are thinking ahead and understand the implications of what they're doing? And this isn't like, if they decide to, this is just the threat of shooting at ships.
So
right now, they haven't even sunk any ships, but these insurance companies won't pay for it. If Iran decides to mine it, it can't be undone.
Mine the strait.
Right. So they can sit on the banks with rocket launchers and shoot them at the ships. And they could do like 1 out of every 20 or 1 out of every 30 and just make it a fucking nightmare for insurance companies. You're going to have U.S. ships saying that they're going to be escorting them through, which right now they're staying far enough away so they don't get shot at.
Yep.
That's going to put them in directly harm's way. It's extremely dangerous. But if they just mine it, the war can't end tomorrow and then it's unmined. Like, that will be decades of problems.
Right. So I think also natural gas passes through. There's not just oil mining. There's natural gas mining and moving liquid natural gas, which is that market is extremely volatile right now, which will greatly impact Europe.
The other thing is that it's not just fuel that they use these petrochemicals for. A lot of them are used to create fertilizer, and the fertilizer is needed right now in the global north because that's where they're doing all this planting, which means that food prices are now going to skyrocket. If there's crop failures plus the extra cost of the fertilizer.
Yeah. So the obvious economic disruption that even a multi-week, multi-month war or a very destructive to the infrastructure war, the impact it would have is so obvious that the only explanation I have is hubris, that they thought they could just they could just demand capitulation, not get it, hit a girls' school and a couple of military targets, and then Iran would just surrender. And their understanding of the politics of these countries, the people of these countries, is so degraded because they are so themselves. And we're talking about this small circle that we think Trump had around him, like Lindsey Graham and Netanyahu and Hegsdeath. Their brains are so degraded, their morals are so degraded that they just thought that this is the way it would work. If they thought through this at all and expected this to be multi-weeks, or that they went through past step 3 and 4 and were like, oh, and then we'll hit the oil depots, and then it makes you think that they're, I don't know, in a death cult. I mean, this is like an extremely unpopular thing for people with lots of money, people with vested interest in the stock market, big agro, Republicans, Democrats, unionists, the guy down the street who just needs to be able to put gas in his truck in order to get to his job. Like, I don't know what they're thinking.
I think that the reasonable explanation here is that when Trump talked about how this stuff is easy and Obama messed up the deal and Biden was too weak, this is on top of, by the way, firing huge numbers of diplomats from the State Department. But a lot of the posts specific to this problem and Elise posts are not filled.
They also fired a ton of people in the CIA.
Yeah.
And
the FBI
who were focused in these areas.
Counterintelligence. Trump really believes, because he's done this his whole life, that he threatens people that they could eventually capitulate, and that he didn't understand why, like, Obama didn't just escalate threats until he got everything he wanted. He assumed that was some sort of weakness or being too smart by half. And what it turns out is that he's describing himself, like, that all he had was bluster. I'm the one who can do this. This stuff is easy. I'll get a deal. All you have to do is be strong, and there's no war is possible, because who would go to war with the United States? Because one, he assumes everyone is as cowardly and selfish as he is, doesn't understand people willing to die for a cause, just plain can't fathom that. And B, they don't understand this stuff at all.
Right.
They don't understand any of these implications. Parliament was being briefed about what this war is going to mean 3 days later. And that's why you saw him so downcast leaving that press conference, because he realized that he was being told a bunch of things that he wanted to hear from people like Netanyahu about how quick the war is going to be and how good he was going to look and all this stuff. And then after the fact, he realizes that no one told him, and that he assumed he knew everything about what was going to happen, and he was absolutely wrong about it.
Right. Yes, I think that people who themselves are so shallow and disgusting and flawed cannot imagine anything but more of themselves out in the world. And it makes them very, very bad, very likely to have poor judgments. Anyone who knows anything about like military operations will tell you if you operate like a decapitation mission where you're just taking like leaders out, even if those leaders are highly unpopular, if you do it in a country, all you do is stoke nationalism and get people more likely to fight back. So like this is like the kind of military knowledge that you can like get out of a fucking vending machine. Like this is like the most
just listen to
basic
one
stuff.
person who's ever studied any of this stuff.
And so I think they've walked us into like a freaking quagmire. And what worries me is like, because this is not a woke war, rather than having a quagmire for 20 years, the way I guess of Obama, they will do something absolutely insane and heinous. I mean, they're already doing things that are insane and heinous, but they can do a lot worse.
Right.
They also
one means a significant loss of life in Iran, but two, I honestly think Iran is being relatively restrained.
It will,
like they could
enormous loss of life in Israel will happen also,
and not to mention like all of these huge cities that are being built in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and all these places are dependent upon foreign capital believing this mythology that's been built, that the United States can be a security guarantor for these places,
right?
And that they are safe places to invest in skyscrapers and whatever else it is. That's gone.
I mean, that's Jared Kushner's whole thing,
right?
It's the internal it's a fucking mess. Anyways, there needs to be a massive anti-war movement like tomorrow.
Yeah.
That needs to be everyone's major political project at this point.
Well,
everyone's, like every party, the people who vote Democrat, the people in office as Democrats, the people that vote Republican, the people in office as Republicans. Like this is like bad news bears. I mean, as a non-accelerationist, everyone should be in favor of slowing this shit down, because this is very bad news for the world.
Yeah. I mean, the issue is like the incentives here are to get this war done decisively and as quickly as possible. It seems to me that for the United States, there is no ability to exit the war without an obvious victory, or something at least you can sell as a victory.
Then they're going to do
because that will be the end of the Trump movement.
And so it's going to be something absolutely jaw-droppingly
and
inhumane and atrocious.
And like we said last time, Iran can't be the first one to step down from the conflict either, because this is an existential threat to them, and they've realized that their attempts to appease the United States have only emboldened this kind of thing, because I guess no one was smart enough to take seriously their capacity to tatter the global economy, and in particular like threaten some very, very vital things that everyone needs around the world.
I mean,
like,
the president,
like oil and food.
The president of Iran said that today. He's like, if this continues this way, there'll be no flow of oil.
Right.
Like,
yeah, and they don't seem to be taking that seriously. Like, you seem to believe that because you have a stronger military, therefore you can have whatever you want. But you can do a lot of damage, but we have recourse. Like, that is a material thing, which you can't overcome by bluster and like talking like it's a TV show during a press conference.
It's not even like it's recourse where it's like Iran's gonna be like, well, we're gonna take our oil and go home. It's the recourse is if you take these actions, you're destroying the underpinning of necessary economic infrastructure that the whole world relies on. It's not even like tit for tat as much as it is like, this is all a fragile balance. And you can't just fuck around with it. And if you do, there will be bad results. And I think you're right. I don't think Trump and Hegsdeath will know how to get out of this war without doing something
crazy. The other thing I want to mention, which is making me uncomfortable about a lot of the discourse, is, and this is from people who are nominally anti-imperialist in their politics, people who are like liberal to radical liberal, to even people more progressive than that, which is like some kind of yearning for like the liberal way of managing empire, which seems to have a much better...
Oh, if only that would come back.
Right. The cost-benefit analysis of doing stuff like this, which seems to suggest that, like, the mistake here was not launching an imperialist war of aggression and choice, but doing so with ignorance of what it was going to cost the U.S. empire, / I guess also people around the world, but like mostly the U.S. empire. One thing I would point out is that, like, having the empire be managed by a bunch of fucking idiots is not a bad thing, except in this case, it seems like what it will do is lead to unnecessary escalation.
I mean, it's not a bad thing if you press your advantage when you realize, oh, they're a bunch of fucking idiots, and you have something to replace them with or challenge them with.
Yeah.
We just lack that.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, I'm still not convinced that this is... The people who are doing it are stupid and are lazy and don't understand any of this stuff. And I guess they're going to get a wake-up call over the next couple of months about what the consequences of this really are. And they're going to be wide-ranging and permanent, including, like, a total breakdown of They wanted to expand their control to Iran, and what they're going to do is they're going to shrink their control over a lot of the countries that they thought they were in with permanently.
Yep.
At the same time, I'm not convinced that this war was not a good idea for the U.S. imperialists at some point, which is to say that the cost-benefit analysis that people are yearning for probably always led to this war. You can tell some sign of that because people like Hillary Clinton have been boasting about wanting to do this war for decades, and as recently as Kamala Harris wanting to do it. The reason is that the smart, pragmatic, measured approach to imperialism that Obama set the standard for was going to eventually lead to the United States becoming second to China. So there has to be a board disruption of some kind, a major threat to China's ability to continue to expand its economic power. And Iran is key to that. So if you're asking why the American ruling class, which is set to pay a big price for this as much as everyone else, is not doing more to stop it, the answer may be in them trying to see where this goes, because they knew that they had a losing hand before. So this short term can be painful, but the long term probably was necessary if you're an imperialist. And that's the key thing here, is that the liberals and a lot of the commentators are not against this because they're against imperialism, and any sign or hint of stealing people's oil, pushing countries around, etc., is bad on its face. They're against it because it was poorly executed, very short-sighted, by people who are stupid and don't know what they're doing. And that's not the same thing. Like, we need a war movement that's anti-imperialist, not anti-adventurist.
Sure. I totally agree. And maybe this is maybe this gets the Democrats a clean way out and through, because their war would have been, honestly, probably just as heinous. But now they can just blame all the atrocities we're going to see on MAGA.
And they'll say, but now that we're in the war,
now that we're doing it,
we have to finish it, which is exactly the same thing they said about Iraq.
Okay, well, let's move to cyber war. Have you heard about the Combating Cybercrime, Fraud, and Predatory Schemes Against American Citizens executive order?
I have not.
So this executive order creates an, quote, operational cell within the National Coordination Center to coordinate federal efforts to detect, disrupt, dismantle, and deter foreign criminal organizations. So basically, it's a executive order that's meant to, I guess, protect Americans from cybercrime. Okay. Mm-hmm. Including the cybercrime that is often originating in other countries and impacting Americans. However, this particular executive order mandates the use of operational insights from commercial cybersecurity firms. Mandates it. So it's like mandating this level of privatizing surveillance and using private security firms. And it also goes out of its way to name the Secretary of War, in this case, our friend Pete Hegsdeath, authority over all domestic digital disruption, which is essentially giving him, I guess, authority over creating a new war theater, which is cyber, mm-hmm. and handing it to the Secretary of War. So we've already seen this private tech military alliance under Pete Hegseth, and he's like the AI. He's all about the AI. Mm-hmm. Loves the AI Nazi posters. And this is a pretty concerning executive order when it comes to privacy and the role of these big tech companies in surveilling everything digital.
Yep. This is just nothing outside the state, right? This is going to continue to expand. Nothing outside the state. The state exists now not to secure the interests of capitalists having a clean space to compete with one another and make a bunch of money. It's now everything is geared towards winning an imperialist conflict, and therefore we can't afford anyone to have interests outside of the state's interest, the state interest being to have victory over like its imperial rivals. So this is extremely alarming. But you're not going to be. They don't see you as a private citizen. They see you as an appendage of the state. They see you as part of this thing that they're building, and therefore they have a right to everything about you, to know everything about you, to control what you do. What you do is of interest to the people in power in a way that's like, of all of the horrific, disgusting things about classic liberalism and neoliberalism, they didn't see individuals or like civil society as like part of the state project in this way. And it's crazy to me. These are like the small government conservatives, and they have created a cult which is that the state must, like this literally Mussolini, the state must be part of everything. Everything must be part of the state. Everything is directed towards the goals of the state, and nothing can be allowed to survive outside of that.
It's true. I guess one more along those lines. The Shield of the Americas, the summit in South Florida was yesterday. It is and at that Shield of the Americas summit, the inaugural Shield of the Americas summit, Trump announced the creation of what he calls the America's Counter Cartel Coalition, a group of a dozen politically aligned countries committed to fighting drug trafficking. During his remarks,
is Cuba one of them?
No. During his remarks, he threatened the cartels. He threatened Cuba. He called the cartels a cancer. He says the only way to defeat these enemies is by unleashing the full power of our militaries and your militaries. He said, and he said that we basically will bomb. We need to be able to bomb cartels. Notably absent from the gathering. Would you like to guess?
Marco Rubio.
No, Mexico and Brazil.
Interesting.
Who both led by left-wing presidents who are trying to resist Trump some of the time.
I guess so. I mean, Mexico's been fairly pliant.
Hegsdeath was there. He said, we, quote, share a hemisphere and geography. We share cultures, Western Christian civilization. We share these things together. We have to have the courage to defend it, which will also be, you'll hear echoed in our artifact, some of that language. And they basically, it's a group of countries that they're using to create some bizarre thing called the Shield of the Americas to, I guess, bomb cartels at will, declare wars on private drug traffickers and invade countries at will.
Yep. Is this the thing that Rubio was at where he talked Spanish and Trump and Hegsdeath made fun of him?
Oh, it probably was. Yes. Rubio, still the smart one in the room, I guess, got made fun of for speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
By Big Daddy Trump.
I hope it was worth it, Rubio.
And Pete Hegseth decided that the way to one up little Marco and score some points with Big Daddy Trump was to say, and I quote, I only speak American.
Which is not a language. The language you speak is English.
Maybe it should be a language.
Spanish also being a
Western Christian civilization language?
I'm almost certain that the country where Spanish comes from is pretty close to the country where English comes from.
And we all share a great civilizational heritage with them being Western Christians. Rubio's like, wait, guys, I thought Spanish was okay.
Yeah.
I'm Christian.
No, you don't. It's not
so that's a nice little segue right into our artifact.
Yep. Okay.